Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ego and ideological doctrine in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. Today, I'm interviewing Gabriel Lugo, a YouTuber who describes himself as somebody who is in the process of enjoying reality. Hi, Gabriel.
Hey, Nick. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, how would you describe your spirituality?
It's a good question. I think the word itself, words are a very important thing because we assign some sort of specific meaning to it.
Mm.
And when we talk about things in the physical reality, we're talking about things that we agree upon, and the significance that they have and, the symbolic understanding that we have. But when it's spirituality, it's kind of like a very open word. And especially now, right, with all the advent of this new age and the acceleration of consciousness being expanded and so forth. So, if anything, spirituality for me so far, because I just keep exploring it, it's uh, it's a fun thing. It's returning the fun to the world. It's returning color to the world, as opposed to getting into the depths of what people talk about.
Yeah, and it's good to remember that it is something to be fun about, to have fun with, play with, and maybe reality itself is as well.
Sure. This reminds me, a big listener of Alan Watts, and
Hmm.
he says that we we have this idea that God, spirituality in general is a very serious thing. You shouldn't make fun of anything in spirituality because there's always the idea that there is an external authority, so to speak, and that we must respect it.
Hmm.
But that's devoiding, divinity of all humor. And if anything, we have learned that this is a playground. We're here to play, have fun, have experiences, and that's it. So for sure.
Yeah, and you've seen children how they're actually maybe in it closer to the divine because they haven't been conditioned so much. So if you take the fun out of spirituality, maybe you take the spirituality out of spirituality. What do you think of that?
If we take the spirituality out of spirituality, you think, is that what he's saying? Like we take
That's
the
what
uh,
religion is, right?
the essence? Yes, sure. So I feel it's this. We would have to put a very known context when we talk about this sort of uh, taking the essence out of spirituality, and it's this grim business about having control over the things around us and not allowing chaos, what we know as chaos, not in the sense of anarchy and what we kind of are scared about, but just the natural unknown of reality, which is really what, like you mentioned, a child is in the unknown every single second of their lives, and it's a mix of emotions, and we have been taught that there are certain emotions that we are allowed to have and others that are not allowed, only in certain times or maybe in certain places. So we kind of create boxes. We control the human experience in ways that fit the parents, the educators, the family members, the friends, and so on. And that to me is the way of control, which is a very male mentality, not really, gender wise, but the male energy, the positive energy of the human being that likes to have control. Fundamental aspect of this reality for sure, but exaggerated or extended to the degree that we have it, then we tend to control everything.
So
And
you're
in that,
saying, are you
yeah,
saying it's a problem when it's out of control? When the when the control thing is out of control, which is
yeah.
unfortunate phrasing, excessive, uh,
uh,
by our balance,
I
then
would
it's a problem.
think, you know, I I wouldn't call it a problem. I don't think anything, to be honest, is a problem, because once we create the idea that there is a problem, we believe that there is a solution. And when we believe that there
Oh,
is a solution, then we get into the ideology,
and it's
they're
duality.
correct, which is, again, see, people may say, well, then creating problem solution is a problem. And you can see where we're getting into an infinite loop here. So in that regard, it's not seeing something as positive or negative. It's not something that is a problem or solution. It's just looking at reality as a playground where we can just explore things as they are. Now, you're very familiar with the current situation in the world, the status quo, and people naturally fighting against this system. But to me, that's just a natural reaction of balance, which is what the universe is. It's not because the negative is bad or the positive, is good, or vice versa. It's just that the universe tends to balance itself, and that's why we see this struggle ongoing right now. This is just my opinion. But going back to the question, if it's if it's a problem or not, I believe it's just the way it is, and we can explore it as it is. In fact, it is a privilege to be right now alive and be enjoying this process of the transition, if you will, the struggle, the conflict that is naturally happening. It's almost like when you see the sun come up in the morning at dawn, and are you witnessing a light taking over darkness, or in the sunset at dusk, do you see darkness taking over light? No, you just see it as a process, and you kind of adapt to it and enjoy, because there's huge enjoyment in dusk and dawn, and there's no idea of conflict there between light and darkness. So if you can get my meaning of this, it's just that to me there is no problem unless you decide that there is a problem, and that's okay, because that's part of the game. It's free will, let's put it that way, to enjoy or not.
Okay. Yeah. I'm inclined to agree.
You
So we
see, there is, if I can add something else,
go ahead.
um, we we have been accustomed to this because again, first of all, there's a natural tendency. Otherwise, we humans wouldn't be plunging into this constant seeking of solutions because we have problems. So there is a natural tendency, but there's also um, I would say, things are exacerbated by our conditioning, which is, again, a product of our ignorance of what consciousness is and what we really are. And with this, I'm talking about the conditioning that we've had for hundreds of years, probably thousands, depending on how you want to see it. And we're brought up to believe that there is, certain ways into which we should react to the environment and people, and there's a constant seeking. There is a lack of something in society, and to me, one of the major things that we have lost is a unified philosophy. If we can go back to any part in history where we were exploring reality, philosophy was about theology or spirituality, the metaphysical, the physical, and enjoying and having, by enjoying, I mean rejoicing, in the creation. It's not only seeking. This is where all the arts come from. Painting has no purpose for, say, constructive society. And bear with me, I'm not bashing painting. Music has no purpose at all. Poetry has it's meaningless. All of them are meaningless. But that is the real enjoyment of this reality, is when you when you realize that this reality has no meaning. We don't have to get anywhere.
Well, I'm not entirely agreeing, because perhaps the meaning is it's subjective, right? It's from each observer has their own meaning,
Mm,
right? So it's not so much that there isn't any, but what you mean to say is that there's no objective independent
yes.
for everyone, like, or at least these things aren't anyway. There might be like hermetic laws that are independent, but
Sure. I mean, let me bring it back on and maybe clarify a little bit, the part of art. Because when I say that our natural pondering of humans bring us to try to understand the physical world where we're living, because we're curious animals, sentient beings that want to know, what the world is made of. And at the same time, we wonder, what is this um, ethereal world that exists in the form of ideas and that are not tangible. So we will tend to the exploring of those two aspects of reality. But then when we realize that what reality is when we start flowing naturally into the arts, which is the full and true expression of humans. It's not, to me at least, it's not, that doesn't mean it's bad, but it's not the taming, or what I call beating into submission of nature, which is really what we're doing. There
it's
is no art there. There is no purpose, for humans to
it's
be.
creation. Art is
Creation.
creation, and creation is divine,
Correct.
right? But
Yes,
there's a intuition, and there's a playfulness and a creativity to that.
absolutely. And you can see that the difference between free form creation of the artist is something that they can explain. You can't really explain, anybody who has brought any sort of art. They cannot explain fully. They can try. They can get close to the idea of what that inspiring energy came through them. And they will always tell you that there's not enough words to explain what they meant to create. And to me, that is true creation. Whereas when we build something for the purpose of creating, say, a house or roads, or they have a full purpose, they can be explained fully. There is uh, no or very little divine energy into it, because it has been created for a specific purpose that has no true human value. And again, I'm not bashing on, say, civilization in general. I think this is just another form of expression of humans within the level of consciousness that we are in. So yeah, this society in general is that product. But you can see also, which is a great example of what I'm talking about, is that in our society, in our ways, modern society, at any rate, there is um, there's no incentive. There's no way for people to make a living, at least not for everybody, in the form of arts. Poetry, painting, music in general needs to conform to a specific, once again, to a controlled way of viewing reality or the world for it to be something valuable. And it's certainly not what's inspired, in children when they go to school.
Yeah,
So
there's certainly limitations of free expression, and we get this from even like at school, and we get this. It's got to the point in the culture where it's in parenting, and it's just this all that control, like we talked about, fundamentally is restrictive of the free expression that art is. And yeah, what do you think of that?
well, it's the product. Again, it's the product of the way we have been seeing the world. And it goes back to the point that I was making before, where we have the root of everything, the root of what we are seeing in this world, and again, I'm not condemning it. I think we should enjoy it for what it is and learn from it, is that we have gone through the path of separation. We see everything separated from ourselves. Um, in fact, even our bodies seem to be separate from ourselves. We say, I have a body, and I feed it. It's not, my body. It's not my environment anymore. But it really goes into the process of feeling separate from everything. Our fear of death, which is something that, as Western people, we also have been conditioned to fear. Death. We fear sharing space with others. This is something that is very common, especially in America, where there is this idea of having my space, my bubble, and all this stuff. There is too much separation, perhaps, and I mean, this creates a huge opportunity for learning. But you can see that it is that fundamental lack of uniting all the concepts of what we are really made of, what we really are at core, and what's our purpose, and how do we integrate with the environment and people, of course, because people are part of the environment. So
Yeah,
um,
I would want to bring something up though, because when it comes to the separation versus with being people being separate and having more space, or people being close together or working together, there's division about that is unnecessary. For example, that some people, let's say on the left, insofar as that's meaningful, who might say, why do you want your free space, even your property, so much like for yourself, but separating it out from everyone else? But on the other hand, they might not believe in God and be separated in that sense. Whereas there might be a sort of community bonding and closeness through spirituality and religion that maybe some people on the right might be drawn to, but they might be very much more in terms of separation on in terms of being individualist rather than the collectivist. And perhaps even the right, even unity itself has become divided up, and especially when it becomes imposed, people go off unity because they associate it with being forced to into a sort of what, the idea that the majority might impose on the minority and that sort of thing. Hopefully I'm being coherent here. What's your response?
yeah, so the way I see this, of course, you cannot do something forced. That's the key word that you used there. We are also conditioned to act in forceful ways because that's what's expected of us. And the word expected of us, or the phrase expected of us, really redounds into childhood. This is where everything was established. You are expected to behave this way. You are not expected to act in this way. And so we were again conditioned into this mind structure that we must be a certain way, right? And because of that, we have a natural rebellious attitude into what we want to do because we feel compressed by all the things that we can't do. I mean, think about it. We have morality, we have cultural behaviors, we have laws, we have rules, we have all sort of things imposed on us where the natural state of a human being is just being. So, of course, we can deal with that because we have been trained in that way, and that's fine. That's where I call the balance. The balance is you need to learn from others. You need to set boundaries. You need to create those yourself.
Right.
That is a natural process.
And what happens? Sorry if I'm cutting you off, but
No,
what happens if
sure.
someone grows up and they don't have those boundaries and they don't have any conditioning growing up at all growing up. Well, it depends what you call conditioning. What happens? Okay, what I'm inspired by here is Jordan Peterson, for example, if you've heard of him, talks about how when we grow up, through interacting with other children, we learn about there's a collaboration, but and that our identity itself is somehow, and our role is like what's the word? We kind of agree on it with everyone else to some extent, and that there's collaboration between people in that process. It's not just simply, and if someone has, there are some people who have a more of a tendency to socially disagreeable behavior, perhaps like more violent or stealing on that sort of thing in a young age. And usually this gets, parenting can deal with that in such a way that they don't continue that behavior as they get older. They stop doing it. But if it doesn't happen, that they end up being criminals often. What I'm getting at here is, I agree absolutely that there's a natural freedom, a natural sort of playful engagement with reality. But at the same time, there must be a balance where we can have that, but without going all out chaos either. And how do we do that while still retaining presence?
Yeah. Several concepts that could be explored here. And the first one is that, sure, in the current state of our society, there is the natural fear that, and I'll add in some metaphysics here because I think it's important. In fact, I think it's crucial that we understand to some degree the metaphysic aspect of humanity, which is something that we have forgotten completely into the equation of what it is to be alive. But let me first address the part, in my view, that say we have that fear. Sure, if we let things run amok, with people, then what would they do? Because now they have freedom. But you can associate that criminal behavior. It's an exacerbation of restrictions. When we go back to restrictions, then we see that the restriction has been imposed by the culture, the society in general, and then it goes back, to parenting. So in our parenting ways, we are creating the conditions in which criminal behavior, and then again, criminal behavior can be anything if you think about it. It really depends on the culture and the lawmakers to decide what is criminal behavior. Because, and very important, say, distinction right now with the psychedelic renaissance that's been happening. I mean, that is a crime. And
I
people,
was a bit unprecise, I think. I meant like, well, causing harm and trouble for others. But in any case, we can get caught up in that sort of thing. But what I'm wondering what the unison of opposites here between control on one hand and freedom on the other is, because it shows an unhealthy disjunction in our society, a dualistic disjunction, where parenting seems to teach us to repress aspects of ourselves. So we have a society where we all get along, but also in a way that's overly controlling and based in separation. But that it creates this other part of us that wants to rebel against it, rather than like something more harmonic that doesn't create such a division in the first place, that where there's not chaos and there's not suppression, or you don't get either problem, but you solve both problems better than you could doing either control or chaos, so to speak.
Well, let me see if I get it this way, and in a way that I can illustrate it the way I'm seeing it. We also want, I think, as humans right now, we're trying to find desperately that balance, which is okay. You know, like I said, we are at a tipping point where we might be too much into the control system, because we are, and there is a natural balance in the universe, with everything. So we're finding that balance, and that seeking of balance may sometimes bring us to a say Puritan way of seeing things. Everything should be strictly 50-50 balance. But then we are forgetting that naturally, for there to be balance, there must be imbalance, right? So we must allow some sort of imbalance in society in general for it to be a sort of balance in say in the bell curve, right? So this kind of swaying, you know, of
Frequency.
things. Yes, of course.
If you see
That's a
it
good way.
like on a graph, it goes up and down, up and down. And the true balance isn't just stasis, right?
Yeah, beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, and that's exactly, you know, how I see it. You know, I mean, we kind of, and it's okay because once we get into concepts, and this is where, again, metaphysics comes into play, and to say, hey, you know, it's okay. You're allowed to have this. In fact, anything, you know, between the discordance in frequency is allowed. You know, there is no harmony. There is a huge disharmony, but it's okay. It's part of the structure of reality. And, you know, we should allow for some sort of chaos, because if you think about it, say if we were to put ourselves in a, you know, a hypothetical tribe, and we were starting this over, how would you teach our children? You can only teach them by what you know, but not so much as to control their lives and tell them what to do, but tell them, in essence, this is the way we know the world right now. These are the things that we do and we don't do. But when you grow up and you have, whenever that may be, you know, 6 years old, 15, 20, 50, whenever you feel that you can create better rules for this, go ahead. The game is yours. We're handing over the game to them, as opposed to telling them what the game is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Though I have a suggestion, I'm curious what you think.
Mm.
What if perhaps the way it could be done would be coming from a place of compassion or unconditional love? If, for example, the parent could do that, where if, for example, one child starts picking on another child, it could be the parenting could be coming from a place of compassion about not how, you know, how it's hurting other people, and teaching about the, you know, the I don't know, use the word problem because you mentioned that,
We
but
can.
the disharmony that comes and how they are one with the other person, and they're ultimately need to deal with their own pain rather than take it out on others and stuff like that, and help them with their inner work from a very young age, because a lot of this stuff is playing out externally what's going on internally and what's not dealt with, right? And
Yep.
so if we really help people heal, if everyone help heal each other, you know, as we grow up, and with the parents do that and role models do that, then perhaps if we all take much more of a harmonic approach to it, then we won't need to have this control conditioning, and instead there'd be harmonic guidance.
Sure.
And you
So
mentioned metaphysics, though. So could you tie that into it?
yeah, oh, beautifully actually, because um, we we're also entering this whole notion of teaching children in the paradigm of the physical, the known, the um, the control, that which we can control here in this surface level of our beingness. But if we bring in what we know from metaphysics, knowing that we are a product of a soul evolution, whereas we are not children. Children are not new sentient beings, animals, animalistic. They have brought in, especially in this era, we can get into that if you want, but in this era right now, we're seeing a huge influx of very old souls coming into our worlds. What does that actually mean? Well, first, again, the interface, as I like to call it, of humans, we see children, we see vulnerable beings who need to be taught everything. But teaching really isn't learning from, and I mean, this is old philosophy too. It's one of the first things that we started pondering thousands of years ago, that we do not learn. Um, and Socrates used to talk about this. We don't learn in this reality. We are not learning a new concept. We are remembering something that we already knew, and we are reinforcing it with the new environments. So
Right.
the natural tendencies that we have, I mean, athletes, it's not like they were brought up in the perfect environment for them to flourish. I mean, they have been practicing this for uh, who knows how many lifetimes. I mean, you yourself, this is not the first time you delve deep into philosophy concepts. You have been doing this for thousands of years. Our soul has a database that has been collecting all this information and refining it to the point that we are expressing it every time we incarnate here in a better way, so to speak. I don't want to say better, but it's just an enhanced way. And so if we were to remember this in children, we would know that while we are guardians of them, we're not their teachers in that way. They are their own teachers, and all we need to do is guide them so that they know what they're learning is part of their own teachings. So this is just the part that I tie in with metaphysics when we're talking about children, because especially with parents that I have the opportunity to talk to, where they show this concern about, am I doing things right for my child? Am I spoiling them too much? Am I teaching them too much, or am I scolding them? Whatever their worry about children and how they're raising, is, and their upbringing, I remind them that there is a more intelligent stream of energy going through the parent itself and the child, and there is a kind of fundamental pact, if you will, between them that is making them create the I don't want to say the perfect, kid or child, but yeah, I mean, it's just trusting.
It's according to a before we live, do we not collaborate with other souls, soul contracts about what we're going to do in our life, what our purpose is, and it includes the basics, including what our parents are and who the friends are, the main friends are going to be, and stuff like that. So I think that fits into it here. So trusting the divine plan which we are part of, and what our co-creation is part of,
Yep.
since we're
Yep.
souls.
Absolutely. See, once again, we go back to the beginning of the conversation where we talk about control. Control is not only about an environment, but also about ourselves. How much do we control ourselves? And we try to control ourselves and believe that, we are in full control of our lives, which again, this can be misconstrued into um, the notion that, oh, then if I'm not in control of myself, then I won't do anything, which is impossible because you're always doing something. It's impossible for you not to do something. Even if you're laying on the couch for days, you're doing something.
You're laying on the couch
So
for days.
yeah, I mean, you are doing something. Something's going through you. There's no way to have, and unless you are trained into transcendental meditation or something, and you're just out in a cave, you're not. And even then, your physical body, it's doing something here. So, it's coming to full grips into what it really is for you not to be in control. And it doesn't mean don't live. It means let things relax, let things flow, and just be an observer of your reality. And when the choice comes, you just have to make a choice. Everything else is outside of your control because it's being, and I don't want to invoke or evoke the feeling of divine will, as there is a divine plan, you don't have to do anything. It really is just trust your soul, trust your heart, follow your heart in that way. See what comes. Don't judge yourself. Don't Those are all ways to control or try to control
Yeah.
yourself.
Trust
And
yourself, as in the Jungian sense. Jung speaks of the self, which is to me linked to the soul, or so. Yeah, trust yourself.
absolutely.
And are you in control or are you in flow? And it's interesting because are you flowing with the energies going through you, which is something you mentioned, or if you're trying to control them, you're really probably stifling them, right? And I've
You're
come across this idea: you don't want to control your emotions; you want to allow your emotions, and that way the negative ones come out. Um, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I'm tying everything that you're saying, and yeah, I agree. I mean, uh, starting out with the emotions, which is the last thing you said, we once this is something that happened to me, and it still happens to me because it's just how we were brought up. We are told to control our emotions. We are told to have this certain emotions need not to be allowed. So, say when I first heard that we shouldn't be judging other people, and I understood that, then I would repress myself not to judge other people because it's not good.
You
And
judged yourself for judging others, and you are the
right,
person, so you didn't really follow it.
correct, correct. It's hard to put sometimes into context, and don't get angry. Angry is not, it's not good. Why not? I mean, just allow yourself to be, and be your own teacher. Because once you allow the experience, then you can also hear yourself.
Yeah, it's true. And being angry isn't the same thing as yelling at someone. That's one way to respond to feeling anger, but it's not like it's the only one.
And it's a anger expressed or in any way just allowed to float. It's like a pressure valve, and depending on how much pressure you have inside you, you you shouldn't control it either. I mean, I would say, and I'm not encouraging anybody to yell at anybody, but think about it. If this is the amount of catalyst that you can have from an experience like this, say, I get so angry that I would yell at you or at my wife or at my son or the neighbor. The available catalyst that exists there is as potent as it was my anger expressed, meaning that if I didn't allow myself to scream at somebody because it was just naturally flowing, then I would not be able to see that in me. But because I did it, now I can come back and of course, with a conscious mind, you analyze and you say, wow, I mean, what I did was awful. I hurt somebody's feelings, or, I just reacted in a way that just broke my trust with that person. You can now start analyzing the reactions of your actions. So, and again, this is probably an extreme example. We can go even more extreme, but you get the point. To me, is allowing yourself to be as you are, no matter what it is.
Because we get catalyst. And if we are allowing, if that's what we're doing, then that allows us to learn. Whereas control, now there might be a different type of learning that's learning about control, if that's the path one wants to take. But it's not, most souls, I don't think that's their path. I don't think that's so. To allow oneself to learn and be, that's how we grow in a harmonic way, right?
Well, if we can agree, for the sake of argument, that the purpose of life is to have experiences, and those experiences, because of our natural makeup as human beings, which is only an interface of the true being, right? Without getting into the deep metaphysics of the different densities of consciousness and physical and metaphysical bodies that creates us, we are a very small expression of our total beingness. So if we keep being reminded by different sources on that we are here to have an experience, whatever that may be, then what is the point of controlling the experience? You're not here to control the experience. You're here to allow the experience and learn from it. The compass that we have, if you will, is love. We have no other compass, because everything is a spectrum of love, no matter how you see it. So if that is your compass, then use it. Damn it. You're supposed to use it to gauge where you're going, in which direction. And it's okay to be in a total indifference of this harmonics that we call life on planet Earth. That's fine. I mean, nobody's forcing you to move. If anything, it's just, and this is to me, what true, or at least one true aspect of awakening is to know that you are in control of those things that you cannot control. So allowing that to be your guide, if you will, then that is probably the most liberating thing you can do, and live without the worryings. Because one of the things, and I um I try never to sound like I'm trying to tell people what to do, but because that's not the purpose of anything, right? But when I try to intervene for the sake of giving a new angle, a point of view, or just a different direction to see things, I only approach people in general and ask them, do you feel like you have a conflict? Yes. You feel like you want to liberate yourself from that conflict? Is that preventing you from being? Then yes, of course. Nobody wants to be in conflict. I haven't found one person who says consciously that they want to be in conflict. So if you have conflict in your life, then you may want to find a way to not worry, because conflict is worrying. Conflict is the projection of the past into the future, ignoring the present. And we very well know that there is no past and there is no future. There's only the eternal present. This is eternity. Eternity is the present. And when you are living in two constructs that are illusory by nature, which is the past and the future, then you have constant worrying. And that conflict, sure.
So, yeah, that's the issue with illusion, right?
It's the beauty and the issue of illusion.
Yeah, there's a word I think for illusion. It's maya, right? And we can live in the illusion or we can live in reality. It's just that that reality isn't as fixed uh, as we've been taught to believe.
You see, the funny thing with the illusion is that when when you first learn that this reality is an illusion, then you want to escape it because an illusion is not real, right? And so you seek spirituality and you find your way into learning the deep side or aspect of the creator, and you go into isolation, you go into deep meditation, and you find that the void is all that there is and everything else is an illusion, and so on. uh, but once you have reside for a certain time, it could be, a fraction of a second, it could be decades, you realize that the whole purpose of the this point of the creator is to enjoy the illusion. So you come back to the illusion. So it's it's almost like you return to where you came from, but now you have a conscious awareness into what the illusion is. So you can participate knowing that it is an illusion and that it is to be enjoyed, a playground.
Yeah, exactly. Now, imagine that there's a playground and there's some kids, but there's this one kid who is taking it all a bit too seriously, and they everyone knows they're playing a game, but they forget that they're playing a game, and then they also try to control the game so that everyone else plays the game like they are, because and they're getting all upset because they want the game to play out a certain way, and so many of us on Earth at the moment are that kid. Unfortunately, we've been conditioned to the point where there's only like one kid who isn't doing that.
Nick, if I could get a clip from this conversation, what you describe is probably the best part we have discussed. Because you just describe history in a nutshell. This is exactly what happened. I mean,
Oh
this
yeah.
is a playground. This is a huge playground. And those kids that got upset and that said, hey, listen, we want these rules to be, imposed here because this is, this height and we have, this amount of kids and we should do this. And then they bring, because kids are kids, they didn't want to do it. We just kept doing our thing. So they bring in the bullies, and the bullies are going to make sure that kids are playing within a certain amount of time here, and then they go do this, and then they need to go need build and blah 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 blah. So this is the way that society has unfolded, if you will. So you just describe it perfectly there. I love
Yeah,
that.
I suppose it's fitting as well because a lot of people get to different levels of emotional development, and not to judge, but some people are still children in a sense. Uh, well, in a sense, they're adults, but a lot of the time, people can play out the same cycles, perhaps, or the same dynamics that they were playing out then. And people get to various different levels of development with this, but yeah, what even is an adult anyway?
It's funny. I can bring something from the Law of One here, which I think is fascinating to know our history. And to be fair, I mean, the short answer for me to what is an adult is it's a repressed child, and this will make more sense when I bring back the history that is explained in the Law of One when they talk about the origin of humanity, longevity, and so on. Although there's much more context that I can put in, but for the illustration, it's going to make sense. We are all repressed children when we live in this what we call the adult form, the adult age. You can see that because most of us just want to play. I mean, if you are like me, you were brought up in the idea that you had to have formal education so you can have a career, so you can have a sort of path, profession, so you can make money. And this all was when you were a kid, you cannot wait to go home to play. When you
Yeah.
went through college, you cannot wait to go home and play. When you went to work, you cannot wait to go home and spend your money in the things that you enjoy doing. So it's play, 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 play. And we needed to do this ages ago. We didn't. And now we're seeking that. Now, maturity may be a better word to describe an adult that has gone from playing to a more rich type of playfulness in their own beingness.
Okay, what's the going from play to repressing play and just working, or only doing enough play to cope?
Yep, yep. I think that is our nature right now as adults. That we are just stuck there. There's a lot that we wanted to play, and again, just the simple aspects of somebody who was an artist and could not develop their painting because they had to go through all this formal education. They ended up being an architect, which was the closest thing for them to painting, and they got into a career and so on. And in their 40s or their 50s, they say, enough of this. I just want to paint. And they start playing then. Whereas, if this child would have been brought up, to paint all their lives, imagine all the magnificent art that they could have brought up. So, and again, it's not a way to say that we're all victims of this society. It's just the potential that we are, and how we can start exploring right now, I think is very important for as many people as possible, those who are waking up from the illusion, to realize that, you are in control at least of your own energy. You are in control of allowing that flow, which is, the expression of the self, whatever it may be. Everybody has their own, inclinations. But to finish up with the law of one, and I think it's just a really cool concept to bring in the raw material, they explain that at the beginning of what we call third density, which is the human experience, we had a longevity of about 900 years. And this was gradually brought down because of our consciousness in general. We were seeing each other as separate, and we were not allowing ourselves to be. We got into conflicts and belligerence, and that reduced our lifespan. Over time, that lifespan was reduced so much that now, if you think about it, we are living about 10% of the potential of this body. Now, again, I'm cutting corners here because there has been a lot of DNA modifications over time by various means. And of course, there is a natural evolution of what is called the mind complex, which allows the processing of information in the soul stream, which is our database of souls. And all of that collective information comes in and plays a different role in our humanness, if you will. But in the same concept, I mean, we know that we've had a body that has been capable of enduring a long time, and that longevity was set up by what we call the logos in a way that was conducive to spiritual growth. The purpose of coming into this reality is to learn in the playground the ways of love, so we can transcend and evolve as a soul. And that capability was taken away by our own actions, of course. And we are in perpetual childhood, or spiritual childhood, as they call it. And I think that's a very strong notion to keep in mind, to know that we, even though we lost that, then that doesn't mean that we're truncated, or life is, it's a waste to live only 80 years or so. No, it's to know that, fine, this is what we got. Let's be kids. Let's enjoy life this way. It's, we again, I cut corners in the ways that we have evolved to adapt into this new body that we have, and the limited longevity that we have. But in the end, it doesn't matter if you do it in 10 years or in 50 or in 100. all you need to do is learn as much as you can from the ways of love and understanding. And that's really all we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe in a way, humanity is going through a dark night of the soul. There's different scales of time. Now, you could say in the last 5 years or since 2012, we're going through a sort of collective dark night of the soul, right? On some level, you could say maybe the last few hundred years. You could even say for the last 12,000 years, since the fall of the Atlanteans. Perhaps as a species, that maybe there's this whole process of development that this is just part of. And even however much tragedy has occurred, that maybe we can learn and grow and develop through all this hardship and come out on the other end actually haven't learned it or having learned a lot. And perhaps if we, instead of being sad about the situation, we can, well, be playful children, start having good time again, and grow up into perhaps sort of spiritual adolescence as a species.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, yeah. That wasn't that like a great goal to have fun.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, I don't think anybody would turn down fun, at the expense of something else. We do it, begrudgingly, of course, because that's just how we have been brought up. But I think also there is the association. Like I said, there's such a key thing, with symbology and words and their meanings. But having fun, it's also another way because, like I said at the beginning, we see God or divinity as something serious that we must respect. We must have some sort of, grim attitude towards it because, you know, Christians are in a way. Um, if you see the way the vanilla teaching of Christianity, it's this, you of repentance. You feel guilty. You feel guilty about anything that has happened, to humanity because it's your fault. That's how it's kind of brought up. So in the same way, we see playing as something that is not constructive. Is that something to be avoided? And uh, there's so much lost in there because eh, everything that we do is just it's reminiscent of our childhood, things that we didn't do, and we would we would probably advance a lot more if we would be able to transcend from that child who wants sugar candy, toys, and so on, to something that evolves, and that it becomes more what we couldn't discover from ourselves. Where was, my inclination to play with cars? Maybe, there was a mechanic side of me that wanted to build things to improve society as it is.
right. And maturity isn't maturing away from play, it's maturing your play through
Ah,
experience.
I love that. Well said. Yes. I think that is the best way, and you just said it with a few words. That is the way of transcending, playfulness. It's just, yeah, improving that to the point where you feel that this is what you want to do for life. This is what, I mean, you shouldn't live life. I'm again, my discourse sounds like I'm telling people what they ought to do, but it's I, if you could live your life, let's put it this way: if you could live your life by doing the things that you love doing, then what's preventing you? What deep analysis, internalization of this will bring you to know more of yourself and liberate yourself perhaps from those constrictions that don't allow you to be, this the things that you want to do.
Yeah,
Just
and I think
do
it's
those
you, right? What's stopping you? You, because
things.
the outside is a reflection of the inside anyway. So
Correct.
So, in fact, like, there's the choice to control yourself or to be controlled is a really a difference, or playing, creating,
Yeah. I think
because
that's
yeah, it is.
yeah.
It's like it is a play, right?
Well,
Like Shakespeare, it's all just
I think it's this Hindu word lila, which is they describe the the way of creation or the universe itself is play. Lila means play, and that's the whole thing of creation. There is no purpose in creation. It's just a dance. It's a perpetual dance of things that are happening. And there's no control. There's no specific reason. Even those within in the context of, say, the law of one, how they explain again the creation, that there are some set parameters, blueprints. The blueprints are set for certain conditions to arise, but not what is supposed to happen. There is no a step-by-step type of guide, in the creation. It's just, let's organize, like you said, say a playground that has specific toys and um, uh, things that you can climb to and so on. And then that's the blueprint. And you create another playground. All playgrounds are different. They have
yeah,
different blueprints. But
and that
what you
never
do in there, it's
that's
different.
up to the kids, and that doesn't limit them, right? They
Sure.
can just be in a field and do all sorts of things. They could go on an adventure into outer space, just on the grass. There's all they will come up with things that you might not even be able to come up with, right?
Yeah. That's beautiful again, man. I I appreciate you adding that, because see, when you bring in the mind of the kid into the playground, into the blueprint, what they do is beyond, the builder of the playground. It's really beyond, and it's really, if we were to say, we the parents build that for our kids, and if we could only imagine what they are experiencing, or we can hear their stories and say, where were you today? And they could say, we were, up in a mountain, and then, we flew through a volcano and stars were exploding, and you're like, wow, I didn't create the playground for that, but that's just allowing free flow, as opposed to, say, the bullies who said, the purpose of this is for you to climb 3 steps and go left and go down and start doing this. So yeah, and again, it's not something bad. It's just that it's limiting ourselves. Once we fall into control, it just keeps
What
coming back.
is the root of the desire for control?
Of the what? Disciple?
The desire for control.
Separateness.
And
Definitely.
why do we separate ourselves?
Fear. There's always the fear that we are the only thing. Think about it. If you were to be one with the creation, there is no way you would fear anything. And if you have no fear, and you know that you're part of everything, which is really what we are, but we haven't grasped that concept truly, then there is no need for control. I mean, it's almost like controlling yourself. Do you control your heartbeat? Do you control the way your hair grows? I mean, it's just happening to you. So all these things are the notion that I need to control everything, because everything is so separate from me. So separateness is really what brings control, because we want to be in control. We're afraid.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's funny because people who want control, they want reality to be as they decide it is around them. They don't want it to be out of control. But when you come into play, you create your reality. So the very thing that they seek through control is what they're preventing by controlling.
Liberation of, or liberating yourself from control gives you absolute and full control of everything. It's exactly what you said, because you once once you realize that there's nothing to control, then you know that you're controlling everything. And everything that's happening, it's you controlling it for yourself. It's like you are making the wind blow. You are the one in control of the things that are happening to you. You take responsibility for it because you just know that it was you. I mean, even in any sort of deep spirituality, you will find that there is no external creator, that the one thing that is flowing through you is the creator. There's nothing else. There's no separate, this is what we call the ego. The ego is this interface that I call the one that's speaking right now, this voice, this collection of memories, this body, the vocal cords that are creating all of this vibration. This is the interface, the ego, right? But when I strip all that away, and I know that the conscious part of me is really the creator, then I know that if I am that and everything is that, then I am in control of everything. I'm in control of the wood that was created. I'm in control of the Big Bang. I'm in control of the future. I'm in control of everything. So I need not to worry about anything, because all that is happening to this part of the environment, which is what I call me, Gabriel Lugo, it's me, it's myself. So everything is being controlled in that way, and I need not to take control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. The listener might have a question though, which would be, it's all very well telling me all this, and I love the sound of it. It's great, but in day-to-day life, how do I apply this? Because like, it's not easy. People get tested, and they're testing situations, and they can be stressful. And how do you deal with what life throws at you in line with what we've been talking about?
We can approach it in two ways. The first one, to me, is to know that everything that happens to you, um, it's happening actually for you. There's a greater intelligence in the creation that is making each and every part. It's almost like, let's bring nature into this. Are the preys the victims of the predators, or is it the other way around? Or do they feel that way? Is there something going on there? It's not. It's just flow. Is the rain, the culprit of the wetlands? Is what makes these are human concepts. These are egoistic concepts that we believe that things are happening to us. So when you embrace that fully, and you realize that everything that is happening is just happening, there's no victim, there's no guilty entity, and you can see as a conscious being, because that's the question. Yeah, the practical sense of it is, how do I deal with this situation? Well, the question is, what is the situation telling me about myself? Because whatever I am feeling is not exactly what you will feel or the other person would feel. So that experience is all kind of like custom tailored to you, in a sense.
It's teaching us something. It's the mirror effect teaching us something, right? That
Beautifully put.
said, when someone hasn't transcended their ego yet, or whether they haven't, they're just the beginning of their awakening, or they're talking about the soul or something, like, and they've still got an ego giving them trouble, perhaps, or something like that. Like, you might know all of these things and know to be present and want to be present and know that it's just a reflection, but it still might be stressful, and there still might be a lot of negative thoughts and negative self-beliefs and all that stuff. Like, and sometimes you get people in the spiritual community to say, well, just be present and it's all good, right? Now, maybe it is ultimately, but that there's something, it's hard to explain exactly, but there's something frustrating about that, to hear it without really knowing how to get from here to there.
we are, again, I think you said it before. We are the ones setting our own limits. We are the ones that are, and that is really the hard part for us to admit, is that we are the ones creating those limitations. We are the ones preventing ourselves from seeing what it is. And that's way when we can say, yes, it's an experience, it's teaching you something, or, oh, well, this is just another cycle for me to understand something, and so on. But it really, if you think about it again, it's control. We're trying to control our experiences. We're not in control. We shouldn't allow any sort of idea that we can control things. And um, once again, I mean, it really depends on the situation, but it all comes down to the same principle. We are trying to control our experiences, or we're trying to expect something from our experiences, no matter
Yeah.
what it is. And your fear is very different than my fear, and somebody else's. So, as I said, fear comes from the idea of separateness, and separateness tries to create control. So
Right.
it goes down that line. But the last thing that I would say, in terms of this, because people really want to know a practical sense as to how to apply, into any given situation, and with everything that we have discussed, follow your heart. That's another thing that we were not we didn't develop in this society. Following your heart, the intuitive side of us. And I mean, I can say it by experience. I grew up with a left brain mentality, very logical, all reasoning, no intuition, no female energy through me, because that's just the way I saw science in the world and philosophy and so on. So following the heart is probably one of the hardest things that we can encounter in our spiritual evolution, or our expansion of consciousness. But to know that no matter, and your heart, this is another thing that a lot of people might not expect or know about themselves, is that there is the dark side of a heart. We have darkness in ourselves. We are not fully 100% pure beings in this form. There is a lot of darkness in us, and we should accept it. It's not about eliminating darkness. Darkness is the contrast for light. So that darkness needs to be accepted and understood, and just allowed to be. And this is not encouraging any sort of behavior, but knowing that in each one of us, it's okay to have some darkness. So allowing the heart to express itself, not repressing the dark side and forcing the light in it, is probably one of the most liberating things, and reassuring uh, um, actions that we can take, knowing by heart, and not uh, catching ourselves, or keeping ourselves in the prison of the mind, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely helps. And I would add that even if you can just be a little more, playful, or a little more present, a little more kind to yourself, or what was it you said about, a little more from the heart, even that little bit will help, maybe more than you expect. And if you could do a bit more, then that might help more. And maybe you're very conditioned into controlled, and you have fear coming up when you let things be, and that's okay. And it's okay if you slam down control and you make a mistake, or whatever that means, right? That's okay too. It's all okay. But you can, if you like, let go a bit, and it might ease things a bit.
Let me try to give an illustration of how this plays, and how this works. And we all have something to relate to one or the other. We have a lot to relate to one or the other. When we are imprisoned in the mind can only work to project the future, or one of the biggest aspects of the mind, or the one that we have reinforced over time, is that the mind projects the future because of the echo of the past. And this makes us want to logically try to build a future based on the past, which is really recreating old experiences. We're trying to recreate old experiences because it makes us feel comfortable. The one thing that the mind tries to avoid at any rate, most of the time, I would say, blocking the heart, I'm saying, just allowing to be yourself here in the mind, is the thing that is trying to avoid is the unknown. Now, when you act now, and this is our society. Our society is built upon, the things that have worked in the past. So we keep reinforcing the same attitudes and behaviors in different ways with new technology, with new approaches, but it's the same thing. It's the same hierarchical process. And it's because it fears the unknown. It fears change. That's why change is an illusory idea in politics and
Yeah.
social political environments.
But what if the known
So,
is boring? And what if the unknown is fun? Maybe then there could be a sense of comfort from the unknown. That
well,
change of frame.
and that is when I feel, and we can all relate to this, that the heart comes to play. Because when you want something by heart that your mind is not allowing you because it doesn't make you see the possibilities and it makes you fear the possibilities, you can relate to this whenever you said, you know what, screw it, I'm going there, I'm doing it
Yeah.
no matter what. You do it. What is the feeling that you get? I mean, I could not, unless you have a real distorted mind.
Confidence.
Yes. No, and beyond that, you get a very pleasant experience. Even if it, like you said, we can catalog it as a bad experience or a mistake or something that went wrong, but it became a beautiful story. It's like when something,
Alive.
yes, yes, something new. You went into the unknown and you came back with a nice story. Yes, you come back to your comfort again and so on, but you had a new experience, and if anything, when you plan a vacation, never goes according to plan. And that's the real excitement when you come back and say nothing went, if you plan everything and it goes exactly as you planned it, it's the most boring thing you can do,
But that's the
honestly.
thing. You plan it all. It goes all as planned. It's boring. And it doesn't go as planned. It's really stressful because you want it to be just that, right? If you plan it too much, that is.
Yeah,
It's kind of setting yourself up for disappointment.
yeah.
So, if you could sum up everything we've been talking about, how do you do it?
We'll go back to play. If we could allow ourselves to just get in tune with the heart, which is really what we must, not what we must, but what the direction of this world, this planet, as it evolves into what we have been calling 4D or 5D, some people call it, the ascension process, the expansions of consciousness, the recovering of ourselves, um, the reintegration with the self, is to know the heart, know that side, the intelligence that flows from the heart, which is everything that there is. There is no mind. The mind is an interface for us to live here, very useful one, but we have given it too much credit for what it's capable of doing. The heart knows way more. The heart knows everything, but it is the unknown. So throwing yourself into the unknown with that playful attitude without fear really is, what the purpose of everything is. And this is why at the beginning I told you, the more I learn about myself, the more I unknow myself. And I don't know, I'm just this one thing flowing and it's doing what it wants to do. Today I'm here, tomorrow I'm not. And I think that is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. So um, fighting the fear, going through the flow of things like we have stated over and over again, and never forget to laugh, because laughter is the realization of all the things. That's why jokes are a good example of realization. Jokes tells you a story, that makes no sense until the end, but something happens and you connect it and you say, aha, that made sense. Okay, yeah, that was stupid, or that was funny, or that was, so laughter is the final realization. Laughter is all there is. The rest is just the construct, the illusion.
Laughter is all that is. The God that laughs.
Yeah.
Well, you do see this laughing Buddha sort of image, don't you? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. I like that. So, if you've listened to this point, thank you a lot. I hope you had a good time. Did you have a good time, Gabriel?
Always. As long as I'm talking, listen, some people paint, some people make music. I talk. This is my art.
Okay. It might be mine. I'm still sort of feeling that out. But
Hey,
yeah, it was a pleasure to speak to you.
thank you, man. Really was a pleasure having this opportunity to conversate with you. Really
All right
beautiful.
then. And maybe we'll do it again. And bye for now.